IVC. Here's a video I've been meaning to do for a while, for at least a week. Probably a bit late getting to it, but this is a response to Norman Maslov's Whack-A-Mole vinyl tag of 2022. Whack-A-Mole's when he just grabs records off his shelves at random and talks about them. And he came up with 22 questions based on pulling stuff off his shelves. You all know Norman Maslov, I'm sure. He's done me a lot of favours. He's sent a lot of his subscribers my way and really helped to boost the profile of my channel. He's a staple in the VC. Seems to, post videos more often than I eat. If you don't know him, he's easily spotted. He's that guy. So check him out if you don't know him. If you don't know him, how did you find me? Okay, anyway, 22 questions. First question was, or is, show an album by a wanker aside from Eric Clapton. And there's plenty of them to choose from in the music industry, isn't there? But rather than going with a wanker, I've just gone with Wanker. And this was a band out of Canada. This came out in '77 on the Axe Records label, and it's hard rock with some progressive moves. It's a decent album. It's quite a hard one to track down. Produced by Terry Brown, who also produced a number of albums by Rush, and definitely one worth checking out. Wanker. Then question 2 is an album with illustrated creatures on the cover. And I've gone with Guns' debut album. And in fact, it's the first album that Roger Dean did any cover art for. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful creatures there. Featuring the Gurvitz brothers, who were anglicising their surname to Curtis on this album. But they've been involved in some great music over the years. Then question 3, show an album named after a film director, band or album name. That's a tough one, Mazzy. How many bands have named themselves after directors or albums after directors? I thought of Gorillaz had a track called Clint Eastwood, but I don't have that. I've gone with Hawks. Obviously they named themselves after Howard Hawks, who I think directed The Big Sleep, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, that kind of thing. So, a bit of a cop-out, but tough question. Good album, good bit of pop rock, power pop, great stuff. Question 4, show an album with a bad portrait photo on the cover. And this is one that, whenever I see this, I think, what on earth was Frankie Miller thinking, allowing that to be the cover of his album? And that's a kind of photo my kids take of me, and I say, delete that right now, and you do not send that to anybody. I mean, look at him, the teeth, the one eye shut, looking a little bit kind of sweaty and greasy. I mean, caught in an unguarded moment, certainly, but someone approved that. How they thought that photograph was going to boost record sales. It's a good album. I mean, Frankie Miller is a hugely underrated talent. I mean, all of his albums are worth picking up, but if you were judging it on the album cover, you'd steer well clear. I mean, even that photo in the centre on the back, or in fact any of those, would be preferable. But somebody chose that one. Mystifying. Question 5 is show an album where the name comes after Roger. Again, tough questions. So I've tried to think outside the box here a little bit. Now, Syd Barrett, when he first joined Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, I think, was averse to the idea of there being two Rogers in the band, and Syd's real name is Roger. So after he was Roger, he was Syd Barrett. So there you go. That's my slight cop-out answer to that question. And this is a compilation which basically just pairs his first 2 solo albums. And great stuff. Question 6 is show a cover front or back with at least 10 illustrated portraits. And I've gone with at least 10 illustrated portraits of the same guy. And it's ENO's Taking Tiger Mountain album. And there's definitely more than 10 there. We continue on the gatefold and on the back. And the sleeve here tells me that it covers 4 prints from an edition of 1500 unique lithographs by Peter Schmidt. And obviously they're all kind of Polaroid photos or something which have been hand coloured in that kind of Andy Warhol style, I guess. And yeah, I would say that qualifies as at least 10 illustrated portraits. Then question 7 is show an album that represents the environment or climate change. And I've gone for David Axelrod's Earth Rot, which I think was the last in his trilogy, which included Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. And I think he's a bit ahead of the curve here, commenting on chemicals going down our drains and causing environmental damage and drought and whatever else. This is a Record Store Day reissue from a few years ago, and it's typical David Axelrod, to be honest. It's cinematic, some great grooves on here. You can see why he's a favourite of hip hop artists, to trying to find some drums to sample. But just great music, and he was well ahead of his time trying to draw attention to these issues. Not that they did a lot of good, but okay. Question 8 is show a solo album by a band member, and I've gone with Keith Richards' Talk Is Cheap album. And I've heard people criticising this because of Keith Richards' voice. What are they talking about? He sounds fantastic on this. He sounds like what he is, some grizzled, chain smoking drinker spilling out his soul. And this is such a great album. It's so much better than anything the Stones have done in the last 30 years. Absolutely love this album. My copy has a promo photo in it. It's not a promo copy, and in fact this photo I picked up separately because I like collecting promo photos. It's one of the other things I collect, just to add to the huge number of records. I've got a ever-growing collection of these photos. But I think it's a nice little addition to the collection. Some of them I stick on the wall, others I just slot in the sleeve. And when I die and my collection gets distributed around wherever it goes, people can have some nice surprises with some of those photos in the sleeves. But this is a great album. Absolutely love it. He's got a bunch of fantastic guest musicians on here. Who have we got? We've got Ivan Neville on keyboards, Bootsy Collins on bass on one track, Waddy Wachtel, electric and slide guitars, Bobby Keys on sax, Memphis horns on here. It's fantastic. And even if you've written off the Stones since Some Girls, this is worth tracking down. Okay, well, question 9, show a band where someone plays an auto harp. Probably loads of albums in my collection where people play an auto harp, but would I know it was an auto harp and not a harp or a 12-string guitar or a dulcimer or one of those other similar instruments? So I had to kind of look this up, and then found out that one album I have and love features auto harp on one track, on the track called Lake Hope. This is a band called Chrysalis. It's a psychedelic band from late 60s. I forget which year this came out. I'll stick it on the screen later. Really good psychedelic album. I mean, some really deep psych moments on here. I mean, the greatest track on here is probably Dr. Root's Garden, which is a lengthier, weirder track. But Lake Hope features auto harp at the start, and It's a folky, vaguely Beatlesque tune, I suppose, with cello and violins. What sounds like a bouzouki, some trombone, strong male vocal. Thoroughly, thoroughly recommended. So that's Chrysalis. Then question 10 is show an album or band where a religion is in the name. And again, struggled a bit with this one. But I came up with Witchcraft. I think that's a religion or an anti-religion. But this is a great album, Legend by Witchcraft. Another one of those Swedish hard rock bands, very much in the vein of 70s hard rock. And Sweden is churning out these bands as fast as we can consume them elsewhere. Really good album. Has sort of elements of their fellow Swedes' Graveyard to their sound. Bit of Sabbath in here. A slight sort of folky, Swedish folky element, sort of informing their sound, I suppose. Good album. Where are we at? Number 11, show a scented album. Come on. How many scented albums are there? I can think of... Well, one I can think of is Strawberries by The Damned. And I have a copy of that somewhere, but my copy is a reissue which isn't scented. So I've had to cheat, and I've gone with Juicy Lucy and get a whiff of this. And it smelled old. Excuse me. Choking on the dust. It smells old and dusty. But yeah, scented album, kind of. And it wasn't until I was digging this album out to do this vinyl tag, I realised that my copy has this tucked in the sleeve. And I love it when you buy a second-hand record, and I've had this for years. And you find stuff that the previous owners have left behind, and the record shops who sold them to me haven't picked up on it. Never found money, which would have been nice. But this is a page from Jackie magazine, which was a English sort of pre-teen girls magazine comic type thing from the sort of 70s and 80s, which decided that these guys were desirable enough to be a pin-up in a little girls magazine. I think that's hilarious. But where else are you going to get a Juicy Lucy poster? Jackie, obviously. Yeah. Teen heartthrobs. Okay, number 12 is show an album where they got the title wrong. This was another tough one, and then I had a flash of inspiration. The Electric Light Orchestra and their self-titled debut album. Now in the States, for the first few pressings, this was known as No Answer, and the story goes that in the days before the internet, or fax machines I think come to that, someone from the US record company was trying to phone the British record company office, say, okay, we're pressing the album, what's the album called? And they couldn't get a hold of anyone, no one in the office. So they wrote on the memo to their boss that they got no answer. And of course, he thought that was the name of the album. So you'll see, I'll put a picture up here, picture of the US label, and it was known as No Answer for a while, simply because they couldn't get a hold of the British record company to find out what it was actually called. Okay, number 13, show an album cover photo taken with a fisheye lens. Another Stone solo album, Bill Wyman's debut solo. And I gave this a spin the other day. I hadn't listened to it for quite a while, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. You know, for that member of the Stones who always seemed to be a little bit lacking in charisma, he actually put out a really fun album. And yeah, enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. And it's got a couple of what were fairly big hits for him in the UK. I don't know whether they charted anywhere else, but yeah, the guy's got a sense of humour. And I suppose a bit like Charlie Watts, he just played in the Stones, did the day job, watched the money go into his bank account, and just enjoyed life. And fair play to him. But it's a good album, good listen. That's a great photo. Then question 14 is show an album that is a sequel to an earlier album. And I've gone with the Staying Alive soundtrack. And Staying Alive was the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And as such, this is the sequel to that soundtrack. The first side is all Bee Gees tunes. And the second side seems to feature loads of people I've never heard of. Cynthia Rhodes, Tommy Farragher, and Frank Stallone. Frank Stallone, who I think is Sly Stallone's brother. It's a decent soundtrack. I mean, the Bee Gees material is great, as always. There they are on the back. Staying Alive. Number 15 is show an album with a non-English title. Well, I thought I'd go with rather than go with an album that's been given a translated title for a foreign market, because I've got a few Spanish presses and South American pressings which have titles translated in Spanish. I thought, no, I'd just go with an album that's originally released with a foreign title. ZZ Top's Deguelo. And not speaking any Spanish, I don't know that whether that's how you pronounce it. And having had this album again for years, I'd never bothered looking up to see what the title meant, but I looked it up and apparently it means slaughter, particularly by throat cutting. So that's cheery, isn't it? But this is a brilliant album. What's it got on it? Fool for Your Stockings, I Thank You, Cheap Sunglasses. Definitely one of my favourite ZZ Top albums. Where are we? Number 16. Show an album by a blue-eyed soul singer. Easy one. Dusty Springfield in Memphis. Yep, she doesn't have blue eyes, but I wasn't going to take that too literally. Very soulful, white singer. Doing a great bunch of tunes, which basically took her from being regarded, I think, as a pop singer to being a really credible artist. And a great track listing. So it's an original UK pressing on the Philips label. And I think it's one of those albums just an absolute essential for anyone's record collection. Then question 17 is show an album with a painted mural on the cover. Again, this was harder than I thought. I thought there were some which had painted murals, and then I realised, no, it wasn't really murals, some graffiti behind the band or whatever. And then the one I did come up with doesn't quite satisfy the brief either, but Nils Lofgren's debut solo album. I thought that was a mural, but looking more closely at it, there were wrinkles there. I think it's one of those kind of painted canvases that was hung up at carnivals and stuff in the sort of 19th and early 20th century. But a great illustration, whether it's on a wall or on a bit of canvas, doesn't really matter, I suppose. And it's a decent album by Nils. Then question 18 is show an album cover that was changed after the first printing. I've gone with Guns N' Roses' debut, Appetite for Destruction, and the infamous sort of robot rape cover. Always thought it was a great piece of artwork. I can understand why it might upset some people, but they replaced it with this, which was what they put on the sticker that came in the first pressings. Just a crucifix with sort of cartoon heads of the band on, which is a lot less offensive, I suppose, but a bit more generic sort of heavy metal skulls and crosses and tattoos. Also, that has a much better cover. Classic album, absolutely classic album. Okay, number 19, a blurry photo on the cover of an album, which I think is the question that Mazzy missed out and couldn't remember having asked, but I'm going to go with that as my question 19. And Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. I never quite understood why that photo was chosen for the cover. I mean, I don't know whether there's a story behind it, but so clearly out of focus, if you can be clearly out of focus. Doesn't seem to have an awful lot to do with the title of the album. To me, it's a bit of a mystery how that was ever used, but hey, you can't really argue with a with a classic album like that, despite the cover, did alright for him. Then number 20 is Show an Album with motorcycles on the cover. I've gone with this reissue of Flower Travelling Band's debut album, Anywhere, which consists largely of covers, including a cover of Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. And it's heavy, psych-tinged hard rock. Flower Travelling Band definitely improved on this album later on. Their Satori album is an all-time genre classic, but this is pretty decent, and they changed the songs enough to make them interesting, make them their own. And the cover's interesting as well. Bunch of skinny Japanese guys naked riding their Hondas. Typical Phoenix Records pressing, as in the quality's okay. Well, they did a good job of Satori, I've got to say. That's a really good sounding record. This one they put out on this kind of aqua kind of coloured vinyl, and the hype sticker on the front says with full colour insert, which if I can get it out, if full colour means the whole range of colour from black right the way through to white, yeah, that's full colour. But hey, you get another picture of a naked guy on a motorbike. And question 21 is Show an Album with denim on the cover. And I've gone with possibly my favourite Elton John album, Madman Across the Water. And the whole sleeve has that denim effect with sort of embroidered lettering on. Same with the back sleeve, all song titles embroidered on there. And I spent my childhood hearing Elton John in the charts and thinking he was a fairly sort of disposable pop artist, which he was pretty much in the 80s, I guess. And to be honest, it was almost famous, you know, that scene where they're on the tour bus singing Tiny Dancer. It just made me think, I need to investigate Elton John a bit more closely. And since then I've pretty much got everything he's got up until the early 80s, I suppose, and then some of his more recent stuff. Great artist. You know, he's had a slide in quality at points in his career, but in a career as long as his, that's going to happen. But Madman Across the Water, absolute stone cold classic. Then the final question is Show an Album with a partial gatefold. And I've gone with this one, Mark Radice. And this, got it in a plastic sleeve, but you can see that's kind of a gatefold. And it's a unipack as well, so the chances of this being intact are fairly slim, but this one seems to have held up okay. And this guy, he was, I think, you see he looks pretty young. He's 13 years old when he made this album. I mean, nice sort of psychedelic kind of artwork there. I think perhaps to try and disguise his age, because I think most people might be put off by the thought of buying an album by a 13-year-old, sort of trying to be taken seriously as an artist. But it's a decent album. It's a decent singer-songwriter album. He's definitely kind of, again, he's in that sort of Elton John sort of vein, I guess. There's nothing terribly underground or edgy about his sound, and I think clearly the producers or the record company steered him towards a certain radio-friendly sound. But there's some good songwriting on here. It's a little bit unnerving sometimes hearing a 13-year-old boy singing about wanting to make love to you and things like that. But hey, it was the 70s. Worse things were happening than 13-year-olds singing inappropriate lyrics, I suppose. But yeah, not a bad album. Interesting sleeve. And I can't say you should rush out and buy it, but if you happen across it in a dollar bin or something, pick it up. It's not bad. So there you go. That is my response to Norman Maslov's Maz's Whack-A-Mole vinyl tag for 2022. I hope to be back with one of my own videos soon where I actually put some thought into it myself instead of relying on other people's questions. And when I do, I will see you then. Okay, take care. Bye for now.